despite all the promises of cloud, right, most Nigerian enterprises are at the early stage of adoption, primarily with O365, right? So it's really saying, what is holding up more rapid adoption or migration to cloud, right? Whether that's IT workloads or just the consumption of the services that you were just talking about. So if they're ready, what's standing in the way, in your opinion?
I think two things. I think there is the concept of change management and adoption. I think we as businesses, as organizations, we need to spend more time in that area. Looking at, yes, this was the rationale for buying it, but how do I change the culture of my organization to begin to adopt these technologies, right? To begin to, it's we're all creatures of habit. I'm used to signing, there's no way I'm going to do a digital signature, no way, hell no. Why is a machine going to tell me, that it's what to do in terms of, like AI assisting me and things like that? People are not used to that yet, and there needs to be that investment from an organizational standpoint to start looking at the culture of the organization and changing it towards a digital culture. Once we start to do that, we start to unlock the latent power that is in all these technologies that we are providing. Continuous skilling all the way from the business, up to the IT guy. You need the right business sponsors to support you on that journey. When the CEO comes and says, I'm doing a video conference call to communicate with the guys in Borno State, and that's how I'm going to do it going forward. Or my town hall meetings, don't expect to see me there. Or my board meetings, once leadership, starts, everybody follows. So we always, the business leaders here, need to also support the transformation by leading by example and adopting the tools. If we do these things, coupled with skilling, as I mentioned, of technical talent that we have, investing in their capability building, ensuring that we are training them, ensuring that they are learning, we're on the right track. By the way, adoption is growing.
Great. Yeah. Yes, I hear. Fantastic. And I hear you on change management, so that's... Yeah. All right, so we've got 3 more questions, right? I have one for Sterling Bank, again, one for everyone, and then one for HPE at the end. So I'll start with Sterling Bank. Now, security, that's it. Top consideration for many companies when making that decision to go to cloud. And I think that you're a bank and you are, using cloud in ways that even derive major benefits. How did you get around that conversation around security, and what enabled you make that decision that cloud security is sufficient or perhaps even greater that allowed you to just openly adopt cloud in the manner that you have?
Okay, I think we figured out that you being on-prem or just locked into yourself is not necessarily going to make you any secured. The services we provide today and the world we live in is a connected world. So even if you're running your own data center, you're already exposed anyway because you offer this as connected service, either to third-party providers or just because a lot of these things are ending up anyway on the internet as service for your customers to consume. So in other words, having some premise, some facility, my location doing this doesn't make me any secured. Indeed, what we have seen over time really is the fact that if you are in the cloud, you are building on the security of the big people who are doing this. And like one of the main presenters also said, how many people can I devote to doing security, worrying about security? Probably I have a team of 3, 4, 5. I could obviously extend that with leveraging the skill of other people who are doing this practical way which we've done this. So we put things in the cloud, and at a very strange time of the day, you would get an alert that tells you maybe this service has suffered some form of denial attack or whatever it is, and this thing has been quarantined. These are times when my people probably are sleeping. If I was trying to do that myself, the bank probably would have lost a hell load of money. Is it any totally secured? I think we all, globally, everybody have agreed that there is no perfect security, as it were, and that's the reason why everybody is going to the notion of assuming breach and being more aware rather than thinking, let me, be secured and not that. But I think it's more even the awareness. And again, how better to be more aware and get more aware than the cloud. And that's been our experience.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that. So here's a question for everyone. We'll take one person. So first to flag that hand, right? Is data domiciliation an issue for cloud migration? That's the question. What are the other factors? In the wake of Nigeria Data Protection Regulation, NDPR, how can Nigerian enterprises balance the data domiciliation debate? Right? That's rather loaded. So who wants to take a stab at this one?
Does it matter? Yes, it does. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Every state is a sovereign state and should be able to take decisions in the best interest of their country. However, you will find that two things. The NDPR is a recognition of the fact that data will continue to be very important, and it really speaks to the privacy and the rules and regulations that determine that, not necessarily around domiciliation. It's more around how you process data, how you transfer data, and the rules that govern that. However, should data stay? I mean, there is the notion that you can have your data stored in a place as long as the protection policies, the regulations, or the things that the poster of the data is providing you is in line with the regulations that has been put together by our government, right? There's that part that is there. But there's also the notion that I talked about earlier, which is the notion of hybrid, that allows you to still leverage the public cloud while storing your data on premise. And there are several use cases, as I mentioned as an example of those, where as an example in banks, the core banking still stays here. That's where the bulk of the transaction is. However, you can make some calls and anonymize your data, do some computing, and then make that data available to people to use. But the core of your data still stays on premise. So technology has also made it possible for you to be compliant while still being competitive, with the rest of your peers across the globe. So what I say to our customers is always keep an open mind, analyze your digital estate, and then based on that, implement strategies that allow you to be competitive while remaining compliant. I think that will be my advice to a lot of people that are thinking in that direction.
That's great. Thank you. And I think that's consistent with the hybrid strategy that we were talking about earlier, that we're starting to see as the emerging sort of strategy coming out in the enterprise space. And so my last question, which is to you, Ernest, is globally, enterprises are embracing a hybrid multi-cloud strategy, right? And organizations everywhere are under tremendous pressure to modernize their infrastructure and to deliver tangible business value around data-intensive applications and workloads, right? How does the multi-cloud strategy work, first? And how is HP working with its Nigerian customers to deal with this technology evolution?
Okay. So, first of all, the question and the answer is very, very simple. We can always make it very complex, but this is very, very simple. First of all, when you are in US or in UK with very large companies, you are confronted with companies that have thousands of servers, thousands of applications, outsourcing, all type of IT environments. So it's literally impossible to be either in one side or another. It's going to be hybrid, there's nothing else, okay? And it's going to be for a long, long time. And everyone, and this gives me a little bit like an explanation to give you a picture better than a word. I remember meetings with very large corporations in US and talking to the CIO, more in a private time, thinking, hey, how are you dealing with the cloud? No? And the answer was more like, hey, I'm like, a train at 200 kilometers per hour has just taken me, and I'm there. The speed, the trees, everything is passing by, and it's very difficult to manage. Suddenly, everybody brings its own device. Suddenly, every department of my company has its own contract with Azure or with AWS, and I cannot control it anymore. They ask me to provision a service, and I take 3 months to provision a service, and they can contract it in 5 minutes. So cloud has arrived not in an organized manner, not in a simple way. Cloud has arrived by a storm, boom, taken them there. And that is the image. This is the way it happens. Then there is the acknowledgement that this is going to stay, and then is how I'm going to do that, and how I'm going to do it easier. If you are a bank, you have to be thinking what type of workloads can I put it there, how many I want to have here or there, and it starts the strategy, and everybody is in that mood. Different life cycle. The ones that started early are in next generation's life cycle. The ones that started late are starting to think about that. But the logic is always a very simple one. I have lots of workloads. Some of those workloads are cloud ready, and then I can just take on them. Many companies anywhere in the world have Salesforce.com or have Service One or has whatever. That's very easy. Tick on the box, boom. New workloads. Infrastructure, new workloads on artificial intelligence or analytics or things like that are very easy to take on those big companies, and you move on there very quickly. Which is difficult is to move your data, your own application, and that's going to take time. And the biggest business out there is going to happen everywhere in the world for the next 10, 15 years. Is going to be consulting companies across the world helping enterprise moving those workloads to the cloud and educating them, helping them to choose what is the right cloud for that workload, and not only in one direction, because once you are in the cloud, are you want to be in that cloud forever? Would you want it back because maybe you change mind? Do you want to move it to another cloud? So at the end, this is becoming the next thing, and many companies are starting to grow up in that opportunity. And when I think about Nigeria, and I think about Africa, I think, again, what I said before, is this is the 21st century. This is the data era. And is nothing stopping any country in the world to lead. And is going to be needing engineers to do cloud transformation across the world in terms of thousands of millions, right? It's lots of, this is the thing is going to be searched the most. And if anybody remembers India 25 years ago, nobody was there doing anything related to software development, right? Like in China, nobody was doing anything related to manufacturing of IT. And today, that's their main stream of their economies. So for me, this is what cloud means. And this is what the opportunity lies, and I think Africa is there to be one of the source of power in the next future of data, and how I believe is going to happen. I don't know if I have answered your question, but I try to deal with it.
Thank you very much. I think that's sufficient. So I think we're going to shift gears a little bit and take 1 or 2 questions from the crowd. Am I right in that? So. All right, so we've got 20 minutes for questions from the crowd, if there are any. Maybe just by way of raising your hands, we've got our team of esteemed panelists here. Does anyone have any questions more specific? I mean, you can be very specific, how do I move my workload to the cloud? How can MainOne help me? How did Verve do it? What are they getting? I mean, I think Sterling Bank was very clear as one of the benefits. So, do we have any questions? Anyone? Okay, there's one question there. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My question might be relevant to Mr. Oni here, probably Mr. Ogbalu, because you're an industry that is highly regulated, so like in the financial industries that is highly regulated and all that. Would you say government regulation has stifled or fueled your innovation and adoption of cloud technology, like your adoption of innovation using cloud. For example, I'm able to sit here and open a bank account with a bank in the US, and I actually did that 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, they sent me my card and I was able to use that. A similar service here in Nigeria, I opened the account, I couldn't do anything. So they were asking me for utility bills, other things, and I called and asked, okay, hey, this is supposed to be like cutting edge technology. Why is all this being requested of me? Oh, it's because of regulation. So my question, are you going to agree or say you don't, that technology, regulation has influenced your technology adoption?
I feel empowered to answer that question because I was in one meeting yesterday with regulators and fintech having a dialogue about the balancing innovation and regulation. So I think clearly the answer to that question is not whether the regulator has a problem about the cloud. I think the question you're asking is more related to whether regulation slows down innovation, which may or may not even be correlated with cloud technology, as it were. I think the regulators are all finding out that they also need to be evolving as the pace of transformation around them is changing. And I think truly, if we have to be sincere, even regulation has come some mile in terms of their journey. Before BVN, for example, what you're describing would have been unthinkable. With BVN, I think we're getting closer. I know there are conversations going on right now around BVN Lite. With BVN today, you would open the account, you probably would transact to some limits, and that's why you have the tiering of account. You have a tier 1 account. But I know conversations are ongoing around something that is being tagged BVN Lite that would actually make you to be able to do full banking transaction. I know there are also conversations going on that partnership between maybe the telecoms industry and the banking community that may actually help us solve part of the KYC requirements we have. That is all about trying to locate you to a particular address and being able to say, I can produce you when there's an issue. So I think there's so much going on in the space that would unlock answers to what you have asked right now. And I think the regulators themselves and regulation is transforming, and we would see a lot more happening in this space.
Okay, sorry. So while we wait for the next question, I thought I would make a few comments. One to do with the regulators, and the second one to do with the question you asked, whether Nigeria was ready. For us, certainly in the financial services space, one of the things we find is that our regulators have also been able to evolve in their stance, and that typically when they take a particular position is because there's always the thinking around, let us protect this industry. And typically you find that sometimes there's a conflict between guaranteeing the same quality of user experience vis-a-vis what they need to do to make sure that the ecosystem is protected. However, I would like to say that we've seen evolution of the regulators. They are, I think, more than in the past. The regulators are more interested in listening, trying to learn and to understand and to be able to balance the risks that they find on different sides. So I would say it's not a case of the regulator trying to frustrate what technology is able to deliver, but a case of the regulator also seeing a larger picture of the entire ecosystem and trying to make a determination as to how ready we are from the point of view of protecting both the consumers, protecting the entire ecosystem. The second one is to do with the question, is Nigeria ready? I think it wasn't as emphatic in terms of the responses. I would say an emphatic yes. In 2004, I put together a schematic as to how we would be able to deliver retail shopping. That was in 2004. And I remember calling a friend of mine and asking him, what will it take to deliver this service? And he described how many servers, the kinds of infrastructure that I needed to buy and to own and to deploy. But today, with just the ideas that you have, with cloud available, you can actually deliver new services and have them ready in the market without having to think about some of those investments, which I might add killed some of the ideas that we had in the past. So I would say an emphatic yes. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Do we have any other questions? Okay, I see a hand in the middle.
Thank you very much for the session. I just want to ask a few questions. When we talk about, my name is James anyway, and what we try to do is to help some medium-scale enterprises to adopt cloud services. And one of the things that we face is when you talk about cloud, we should also be discussing about costs. And the medium-scale enterprises, when you're trying to interact with them, one of the things that I've seen is that, hey, James, you've come again. These things we know about, adopting cloud is costly. One of the project managers, even he accosted me, he told me, he said, our AWS, some of the things we are running there, if some of all the services we're running there cost us a lot, and we are not using part of all of the infrastructure that is there. But the point is, if we are trying to help medium-scale enterprises to adopt these cloud services, how can we talk to them in the form that they will know that this cloud is not expensive for them to use? Or can we say that, are we going to say it is not inclusive? I know some large-scale enterprises that can afford cloud. Is it all inclusive of even also the medium-scale enterprises? Or can we also say that it is at the long run that we can say that the medium-scale enterprises can afford the cloud services?
Okay, Jemison, let me try to rephrase your question so I think what you're trying to say, and I will pass this to the panel, is you're suggesting that cloud is expensive, and based on your experience, the question is, how do people actually save money by moving to the cloud, essentially, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Ernest, please.
I think a better answer, more than Microsoft, because Microsoft will say it's cheap, right? So I would like you to think an analogy and use a little bit of my presentation before. If you go to the life cycle of IT and you position yourself in '89 and you were talking to Burroughs and IBM and DEC, etc., and you ask them if their technology was cheaper or expensive versus the new technology arriving in open systems, probably it will be a message of, new technology is also expensive because you don't have the IT to develop the new applications, and it's very costly to transform, blah, blah, blah. But if you do a 25-year view of it, since the future, you realized that by the Maslow rule, the pricing in servers have declined very significantly, right? And why it has declined? It has declined because it was open systems, because you start to get same people competing, offering exactly the same, and you have the choice to move from one technology to another, while before you were absolutely working with a proprietary technology, you could do nothing about it. And that was very expensive. So when you look at cloud, you should not look at cloud in this minute. You should think that there is no other way forward. This is like open systems. Everybody's going to move there. It's not you like it, you don't. It's nobody asking you permission. This is going to happen. It's about you embracing it. It's about you taking over, and it's about you figure out how you get in the cheaper way. Now, the better you prepare your IT, the better you understand it, the better you learn, the more capacity you will have later on to be choosing different providers, to be choosing the cheapest out of them. And what you are going to experience is that the price is going to be reducing and reducing and reducing, because this is the new open systems. And what happened in the past is going to happen in the future. Now, let me tell you something, just to make you think. All of you are nerds, so think about it, okay? 10 years ago, in a different market, in networking, in telecommunications, we had Nortel, we had Lucent Technologies, we had AT&T, we had Alcatel, we have plenty of different companies. What happened to them? They were very strong. They were Superman 3 in that market. What happened to them? Suddenly open systems arrived. They could not compete anymore. And then suddenly they had to, once disappeared and the other one figured out. And what happened with the storage, or what happened with the networking in our IT has not had the same decline in price than the servers, because the servers had open operating systems. That not happen in the storage or the networking. When we are talking today about software-defined networks and software-defined storage and software-defined data centers, we are talking about cloud. Cloud means open systems for all the IT infrastructure, means open systems end-to-end, means price is going to go down and down and down and down and down, because it's the logic of the building of the infrastructure. So that's, for me, the way I think about it, and particularly on the point on embrace it, the sooner the better. Make sure you are not the last one to do it.
All right. Just from me, a word for you when you think about dealing with your small businesses. It's very important to recognize that it's a journey, right? And there's one thing you need to work on, which is, and we call it optimization, which is you don't always, the flexibility that the cloud allows you is such that you don't always have to, the meter doesn't always have to be on. You need to really examine the use case for your customers. If your customer doesn't need to have that service on 24/7, you can automate it such that you shut it down when you're not using it, hence saving them some money. If you realize that all the service providers, do this, if you realize that the services that you want to use, you're going to use them for a long period of time, you can talk to your service provider to reserve the capacity that you need, and by doing that, you end up paying, you get rewarded for that by getting some significant discounts that go as far as 30-40%. So there are various methodologies within the world of the cloud to help you to optimize and save your cost. And this guidance is available online, and I would suggest that you do check it out so that you can in turn advise these small businesses on how to best save their money and optimize their costs as they go on this journey. Because again, when you talk about, you need to always also learn to have the value conversation, which we can have discussions about. But when you combine the value conversation with the optimization methodologies that all cloud service providers give you, you end up providing the best value for your customers. So for SMEs, yes, the cloud is for them, and there are methods in which they can optimize and save costs while transforming and still delivering value back to their own customers. Thank you.
Thank you. I completely agree. Thank you, Wally. Thank you, Ernest. I think also MainOne has provided architects, cloud architects in a booth outside after this session. You can talk to them as to how you can get your journey started, because they do know exactly how to tweak this cloud, how to optimize it to ensure that you're getting the maximum value out of the cloud. I think we have time for one more question before we close this panel. Is there? Okay, I see a hand there.
My question is actually for the DG of NITDA. It has to do with, the cloud too. So my concern is, where does the telcos now, where does our data reside? Is there any regulation by NCC with respect to data residency of the subscribers? You know, because, for instance, I know Huawei is a big player in Nigeria. I mean, handling most of the mobile network operators' infrastructure, and I'm sure their storage too. Yeah, so that's my concern. You know, it's always bothered me where our data reside. Do they have any obligation, or can Huawei tomorrow just leave Nigeria and just elope with all our data? You know, the subscribers' information, basically. That's the question.
Thank you.
All right, I'll help the DG of NITDA with the second part of the question, which is specifically about a company, which is Huawei, because we are aware that they do have data centers in Nigeria, and they are also a tenant in the MainOne data center. But I'll leave the regulation question for him to answer.
Thank you. Yeah. For the first part of the question on the regulation, I had a side chat with Wale before this session started about the data regulation, data protection regulation, and data residency, which they are entirely two different things. On data protection and regulation, our focus is on data privacy. And in addition to that, we try to create a new industry, globally competitive economy, because the economy is being driven by data, and also sustainable job creation. On the data residency, yeah, that one, there is two parts to it. You know, the world is becoming a global village. Government has its own concern about where the data reside, because our fear is if our data reside in a country where we have a hostility issue with that country, it can decide to maybe find out or maybe make sense out of the data we have with them that can harm the country at the end. We have our own concern on that, and also our major concern is on job creation. We want the giant tech to come and invest in Nigeria. We have the population, we have the competitive advantage. Nigeria has one of the youngest population in the world. And if you look at the way the digital economy is driven by the digital native. So we encourage them to come and invest, build their own data, and we want our own data centers also to be global data center. We don't want MainOne data center to be limited to only Nigeria. We want other countries to host their data here. So we are trying to balance the advantage and the disadvantage of the data residency, but I don't think there is any clear-cut regulation that says don't host your data outside, but we encourage local content. And we are forcing, I can say more than 90% of the government data now is hosted locally. And we are going to have data localization workshop recently on how to get more or to get 100% of the government data hosted in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, thank you, everyone. And with that, I would like to thank the crowd, thank our panelists, Ernest, Wally, Yinka, Mike. Thank you so much. And bring Tosin back on. Yeah,
yes, indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, can we get a round of applause for our esteemed panelists? This is a panel that I was super excited by, and I will just reel off a few of my notes really quickly. One of the first parts of it delved into the fact that tech is central to digital transformation. And you can't talk digital transformation without talking cloud. Cloud has gone beyond being just an alternative. As a matter of fact, cloud is considered the only way. These were words by Mike Ogbalu III. My main man, Yinka Oni, Organ Nerd, he was like, we have a need for a strong provider ecosystem. And he also said clearly that enterprises are ready for cloud. Adoption is happening, and indeed, they are driving various use cases. One thing that was said by Mr. Olokodano is that we must invest in upskilling our human capacity. And he also said that even though adoption is growing, there are barriers to adoption. And one of those barriers is culture. And then he lays a challenge to the management team of technology companies and all companies, as a matter of fact, to lead by example in instilling a digital culture. One very exciting piece for entrepreneurs within our midst was by Mr. Salas, who said that there are business opportunities not only for organizations and enterprises, but also for nations indeed. And one of those opportunities is for consulting companies that are going to help enterprises globally to move their workload to the cloud. And that brings us to the fact and reality that this could be the game changer for Nigeria and for Africa in general. Why? Because very well we could be the ones providing that workforce who helps to move that workload. But of course, we must invest in technology education. Ladies and gentlemen, that was an exciting panel, and I do feel like the next panel indeed is going to be even more exciting.
It's been quite interesting and wonderful, especially talking about cloud computing and seeing the kinds of work that MainOne is doing. It's always exciting seeing a Nigerian company that is doing big things, and more or less it puts us on the map in terms of global computing. More or less we can get the same types of services that we get from the big hosting services, and we're able to get it here in Nigeria. It's fantastic.
To be honest, this is my first NerdsUnite conference, and so I really didn't have anything to look up to, but getting here right from the gate, I was like, wow, this is big. And you have a fair mix of people from both like industry players, government players, even nobody's here, which makes it a very variety of people. So honestly, if I had known earlier, I probably would have done your last 5 events, because this is a place to be if you want to understand how tech is growing in Africa.
That we have the conference. It hasn't been more important ever in history, you know, in terms of leaning on technology to advance the country. Technology is always that multiplier that really helps to advance countries and economies. And I think that being able to actually gather people in one room and talk about some of the fascinating new technologies that exist, I think it's always very important.
I mean, I think it's really simple, right? Especially for us as startups, as new businesses coming up, right? If you're looking to scale, if you're looking to grow quickly, you do not have to reinvent the wheel every single time. You need to just find the right value proposition for the right partner and ensure that you are both offering each other something that the other person wants. So I'm more for integrations than building from scratch, because honestly, a lot has been done in tech over the past 10 or 20 years. So you don't have to reinvent everything, build your own architecture, find the right resource, find the right partner, agree on a mutually beneficial arrangement, and the rest is just history.
Well, I think that building products is really all about the customer. It's about the value. It's about creating a value for the customer, okay? So to that extent, it depends on the kinds of business models that you have. In many situations, it may not be useful trying to reinvent the wheel, where you can actually leverage existing services. In some other models, you find that it really doesn't make commercial sense trying to build from scratch. So it depends on that value that you want to deliver to the customer. But to a large extent, if it already exists, if it's able to meet your needs, why don't you use what already exists?
Well, your needs. So I can only speak for our scenario as Kudigo. So when we started our business as Kudigo, we identified that we wanted to be a player in a very big industry, right? We wanted to be a retail tech company, a fintech company, a big data company, because that's where the value really was. So the question was, do you build your own fintech resource? Do you build your own retail engine? Do you build your own big data AI? And if you want to do all three as a startup, you won't survive it. So what we did was, for the fintech part, we partnered with InterSwitch, which ensured that across 12 African countries, you can actually process every transaction without having to become a fintech business. For retail, we build our own retail engine. For big data, we partner with a lot of other partners. So for us, that is why we've grown so fast and so quickly. So like I said, in our scenario, integrations has been a game changer for us.
We use a host of different technologies. We use both private cloud, hybrid cloud, and public cloud. And like I said, it really just depends on what that need that you want to meet is and the kinds of service you want to provide to your customers.
I'm not speaking for everyone, I can speak for our context. And as Africans as we are, as much as people want to say, okay, I have a virtual client, they still want that personal relationship. Now, local cloud companies understand the African context, where stuff like connectivity, power issues, and they build for that context. So if I'm going to pay for a service, I rather pay for somebody who understands where I'm located, who I'm serving, and builds resources to scale that up. So I personally will want to go for local cloud. Like it's where it should be. And even when issues about data protection comes into play there, like what we were asking at the summit, right? Data risk and all those things. I'm better off having my data domicile in Africa can actually walk to than where I was going to get a visa to go to go and even push up my own data. So for me, local is the way to go. You know, we should take over the world, not the other way around.
I think to a large extent, what MainOne has been able to do really just puts Nigeria on the map. Okay, you are able to enjoy practically the same cloud-related services that you enjoy out elsewhere here locally. And more importantly, when you now begin to talk about whether you want your data to be hosted anywhere offshore, MainOne provides a local alternative, and where those questions become important for you, then MainOne provides a better alternative to the international providers. But outside that, it's actually the same type of level of service that you enjoy with the international players now available with a local player, MainOne.
The next session, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be adapting technology to accelerate growth. And we've got excellent speakers. And I am also told now that we are ready for the Microsoft video. We're good to go? All right, let's go for it. Please fix your gaze.
We are migrating to Azure to handle 18 billion integration points and 8 billion transactions over the next 3 to 5 years.
The hybrid was the only option for us. There are workloads we simply can't move all at once. We need to move over time, and we need to move them organically. The hybrid cloud enabled us to move the workloads that made sense and continue to operate our business on-prem. Microsoft didn't ask us to bend to their vision of a cloud. It was Microsoft meeting us where we are today.
KPMG wanted to do less of the daily running of their data centers and do more of what they're good at. We looked at different type of stack technology, and we decided very quickly that Microsoft was the one furthest ahead. Azure Stack gives us the flexibility which we need.
There is always going to be a requirement for hybrid, and data is going to move into the cloud and back again.
Being able to provide access to data centers worldwide was the primary driver for us to head to Azure. Hybrid benefit is...
Now at this point, we go straight to the raffle draw. Can we have the platform on screen, please? And ladies and gentlemen, so what I'm going to do is, as I've done before, I'm simply going to have you do the drum roll. So ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the Beats by Dre 3 headset is, drum roll, 193. Next number, 193. Make your way up here as quickly as you can. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please get a round of applause for the winner of the Beats by Dre Studio 3 headset. And please remember, you're going to give us your superpower. Your name, who you work for, and your superpower.
Lekon Mudashu. I work with Corporate Limited Analytics.
Lekon Mudashu. works with CobraNet, and his superpower is in analytics. I think this is the second analytics superhero or super nerd that we have. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we still have to do another drum roll. Can we get a drum roll, ladies and gentlemen? Drum roll. The winner is number 164. Are you in the building?